So Barbara is going to talk about her own patterns.
Um, so yeah, a little bit more about myself. I introduced myself briefly, but as I mentioned, I recently concluded a career in healthcare, um, and had been working on this transition with a coach actually, for about 4 years. I have started coaching over the last 9 years. Um, I first got certified. As part of my work with one of the health systems I worked for, and really connected with it and really saw that as my sort of next career, although I didn't want to do it full time. So I'm transitioning to semi-retirement, and doing it deliberately, slowly, and we'll get into why when you look at my patterns, because I have a tendency to just jump from one thing to another, pedal to the metal, full drive ahead. And so I'm trying to turn a different page and taking largely a break between leaving my executive career and starting my coaching. But I did get certified as a brain health analytics coach as part of that process. I'm really enjoying the tool and really enjoying being part of the guild. And a couple other points about my story that may be relevant. I'm a cancer survivor. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. As many others that have had health events, that can be a very transformational experience, right? Really eye-opener as to what it is that's important in life and what it is that you need and maybe not getting out of what how you're currently living your life. I have big hobbies. I'm a singer. I'm an avid equestrian. I ride horses. I have 3 Icelandic horses I share with my husband. One of them is my husband's horse. And that takes a lot of time and energy. And I love working with horses and animals. I think they're great teachers. Horses are incredibly great emotional mirrors. So I actually want to pursue a certification in equine assisted learning as well. That's one of my other goals. But that will factor into my story. So when I first took the cognitive clarity scan, I was still working and still at the end of my career, pretty much in an active burnout phase, after 34 years of working at a very high pace and speed and with a lot of responsibility. And so the unrelenting pattern, unrelenting standards pattern was the one that fired up the most, along with a few others that I'll touch on briefly. Social isolation and punitiveness of self popped up. And as you all know, the unrelating standards pattern is this internal pressure to meet excessively high standards, often at the expense of our own well-being. So it's like not having an off button. Drive, drive, drive. Always pushing for more, pushing yourself very hard, sometimes pushing others with you hard along the way. But it's just that internal, you just are on. And I worked for a CEO for a while that had this pattern now, retroactively, I know. And he took pride in saying, I'm just always on. I'm always on. When I get up in the morning at 4 a.m., because that's when you get up, to when I go at bed late at night, I'm always on. And, learning about the unrelenting standards pattern, I'm not so sure that's something to take pride in necessarily to that degree, right? One of the big things I like to do in my practice is help people achieve a healthy balance. And yes, some of these patterns can make us successful and serve us in many ways. But if it comes at a cost, then it is not in balance, and therefore it's not sustainable. And that's where burnout comes in, right? Burnout is what people experience when they're not in a sustainable state. So what rang true for me as I learned about the pattern was perfectionism, right? Setting extremely high, often unrealistic expectations of myself, overworking, neglecting rest and relaxation, which is workaholism, and then that chronic dissatisfaction that I'm not doing enough, that I have to do one more thing, or lean in a little harder or learn a little more. But as I mentioned, one of the questions I like to ask myself and I like to ask my clients is, okay, so one of these reasons why these patterns persist is because in some way they serve us, right? So the question was, how has this served me? And of course, in the corporate world, this sort of pattern gets rewarded a lot. I think many of you mentioned, the corporate world really, to the point of being toxic, encourages us to have this relentless drive and express it and use it. Um, so I got a lot of feedback that I had great initiative and was praised for my self-direction and the creativity and the ability to solve complex problems and be ahead of everybody else and be a visionary. And so, that's a lot of reward. That's a lot of positive accolades. And so I got recognition, I got promotions, I got pay raises, I got bonuses. And then the first part of my career, it was so fast. I never even asked for a promotion. I just was like elevated from one job to the next. And to what one of you said earlier, I never really got to reflect on what is it that I really want to do? What is my true purpose and my true desire? It's more like, you're good at this. You should be doing this. And that's all it takes for me, for that pattern to get activated. Oh, I'm good at this. Therefore, I must lean into it, crush it, and be the best at it, right? Whether it is that's something I want to do, that is something that I've just really leaned into in the last 10 years of my life. The other part why this pattern has served me is because I have a social isolation pattern that is also pretty active, where I feel sort of I'm different and I don't fit in. And this unrelenting standards and the success that comes from it and the recognition of, wow, she's really good at this or she's really smart. That was a way for me to find social acceptance and respect. So that also then was reinforcing because suddenly I belonged because people respected me. So it becomes sort of like one feeds on the other. And that's what I love about the cognitive clarity scan. A lot of these patterns interweave and they reinforce each other. And so you might think you're only working on one, but you end up working on more than one because they very much interrelate. So needless to say, that pattern cost me, right? I was driving myself more than necessary. It was causing really high stress and anxiety, fatigue and burnout, probably contributed to me getting cancer, frankly, certainly didn't help. And it's just that constant criticism of myself, which is the punitiveness of self pattern that pops in. Right? It's just really distressing because you're constantly going, okay, could I have done this better? What could I have done more? What do I need to learn better? And it's this unhappiness that seeps in with who you are in the world and where you are in the world. So how that, but the insight I really gained was as I was approaching an retirement, I was like, whew, I'm going to leave this high stress job behind. I'm going to have a lot more time. And a lot of that work stress is going to be gone, right? And of course, when you have that unrelenting standards pattern, it's like, this is going to run all areas of my life. It's just going to shift its focus. And my husband was the one who kept telling me, you better find something to do in retirement because it's not going to end well. You can't sit still. It's not going to end well if you don't. But maybe the whole point is for me to learn how to sit still, right? And not to drive so much. But this will follow me. The old saying, wherever you go, there you are. That's very much at the point where I am. So this is a very important pattern for me to explore. So I don't take it on into the next phase of my professional life or my personal life and turn things that bring me joy and that I do because I love them into something that I dread because I just drive too hard. And as I was scanning my personal life and saying, well, is that already having an impact somewhere else? I realized that, it's actually showing up in my hobby of horseback riding. Because I had, gotten good at riding. I'd gotten feedback, you're a really good rider. You should get more horse. And I was like, I'm a really good rider. I should. So as my mare was getting older and I needed a new horse, I basically talked myself into with, people that I worked with that helped me buy a horse into a very young, not very, just barely trained, very talented and complex horse. Well, he required a lot of work. And so here I was like, I must pursue this. I must be best. I must learn how to train this horse. I must, make him the best. I must bring out his potential. And there was all this must suddenly there, right? This obligation I felt because I have now this unrelenting standard focused on my hobby. And suddenly I'm not enjoying riding. I'm not doing trail riding with my husband. I'm not out in nature, which is my whole purpose. I'm too focused on competing, which I do once a year. So what? And so as I looked at that, and I had in the last year, I had 3 bad falls off that young horse with 3 concussions. So it was a wake up call where I'm like, it's just not going to work. Maybe I need to do something different. Um, so, as I was struggling with this and saying, okay, I'm at this fork in the road. I don't want to carry it into my professional life, but I also don't want to have it start affecting my personal life and my hobbies. I had to challenge and reframe my beliefs about what has just popped up in my hobby. So the first one was, well, who cares if I compete? Where did this even come from? And it really came from one of my trainers who said, it's great. Competitions are great. You get feedback. You learn over time how you're doing, and you have a really good horse. And so I competed for the first time and I did really well, and then I kept competing and getting ribbons. And so it's like, okay, here we are. I got to do this. But really, my horses don't care. And this is probably the biggest insight. Horses just want to be horses. They want to have food. They want to have shelter. They want to have social interactions. They want to feel safe. That's all a horse needs. And a horse doesn't know what their potential are. They don't know what their breeding are. They couldn't care less. So I'm not doing it for the horse. I'm not really doing it for me. So I can just not focus on that and say, this is not my main goal. And if that's not the right horse for that, what I really enjoy about riding, I can sell him and I can get another horse. And that's sort of the path I've pursued. And through that, I found the joy back, right? Because I've shifted the focus, the priorities. I set different goals because I got back to what really brings me joy. What is my true desire? What is not what other people tell me that I'm good at that's driving this? And the biggest insight here, the beauty of the unrelenting standards. I remember one time my husband asking me when I was recalling a really stressful work situation, he said, well, who's driving you, Barbara? I said, and I kind of looked at him. I said, nobody drives me. I said, you don't have a boss that's like beating on you, saying, get this. Like, no, I do that all by myself. And he goes, well, that means you could change it, right? And I was like, yeah, But, and I had all these buts, but the organization and the context and, the where they I need to, and no, I really don't, and so the empowerment with the scan was that nobody is driving this by me but me. Therefore, I'll have all the power to change it as well. So as a result of working on that pattern, I now can catch myself in the moment, right? When I see it pop up, and it does pop up, and it served me very well, and it'll always be with me. But I can catch it before it becomes so overbearing that it's, has me headed off mindedly in the wrong direction. So I can let go when unrealistic, rigid, high standards emerge. And it's a deliberate practice, right? Because it takes a lot of effort. Really important learning how to turn off or pause my drive, to find that pause button. That's why I'm taking it slow with my transition into coaching, right? It's like, just take a break. Just do nothing. Just hike, be in nature, enjoy my horse. Giving myself permission to be happy with good enough. Good enough, that's fine. No need to be perfect. Don't need to keep achieving the best, the A+. Don't need to be first. If I'm happy with good enough, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And then importantly, also to show myself compassion, because the self-punitiveness part of myself, right? I really need to have more forgiveness and more compassion of myself when I'm not meeting those standards. So when it keeps popping up, is showing compassion that, it's a long-term journey. It's not a one and done. I recognize it, it's fixed. It's not going to happen. But just that it's a process, and to embrace and enjoy the process and keep learning from it. And through all of this, it brought back a lot of joy for me. It certainly has reduced my stress. Not having the job has reduced my stress, but not replacing it with something else, I think is the most important thing that the scan brought to me. And then, how I can use that for my clients. A lot of high performers have this pattern because it's so reinforced, right? So to some extent, we select people into leadership roles who have this pattern because they have what it takes. And so I think the spotting when someone is on an unsustainable path and helping them prevent burnout, or when they're already at burnout, helping them turn the corner. I think that's where that experience and using the tool and having been there myself can really help me with my clients. And what I like about the cognitive clarity scan is it's more than a stress management band-aid, right? Where you tell people to do this practice or do that practice, and people struggle to understand why. Why do you want me to keep a gratitude journal? And why do you want me to do this? And rather than just saying, trust me, it works, it's more like the patterns show and focus the intervention really on what is happening with that particular person. And it helps me focus my interventions to, well, if this pattern is most active, then these interventions apply more than as the general, toolbox of stress management tools, for example. So that's my story. Thank you for letting me share it with you.